Hello. Hi, Rusty.
Hi, Jan.
Hi. Thank you all for being here at this Hawaii Book and Music Festival conversation between Rusty Komori and myself. I wanted to introduce Rusty to start this off. I've known Rusty since he was a junior tennis player, Mililani courts. I used to watch him playing, and I saw how quickly he rose to the junior ranks and became a highly ranked junior player in our state. And after graduating from Damien High School, he got a scholarship to Creighton University in Nebraska. And, his tennis career really took off after that. He became the #1 tennis player, I think, in your freshman year, right, Rusty? And he maintained that #1 ranking throughout his career. And if you read his books, I mean, he had some marvelous matches and wonderful experiences. And I think it really helped him to grow as a person. Rusty is, because of his exemplary record as a Creighton tennis player, as well as his leadership as the team captain, he was actually inducted into the Creighton Hall of Fame in 2014. So congratulations on that, Rusty. Now, when Rusty graduated from Creighton, he came back home and he started to teach tennis. And our sons, Justin and Jaron, were amongst his first students. And we saw how very effective he was as a teacher, how very motivating he was, what a great communicator. And the kids really, really grew as a result of his tennis instruction. So frankly, I wasn't really surprised when in 1994, he was named to be the Punahou tennis coach for the boys. And therein started a career that lasted 22 years, undefeated in the state tennis championships. And that is a national high school record. So awesome that Rusty and his tennis players at Punahou really could, they still have this record. Now, when Rusty retired after 22 years at the helm, I wasn't sure what he was going to do, but then he came out with a book. And it was such an interesting book. It's called Beyond the Game. I guess you can't really see it, but Beyond the Game, Coaching for Peak Performance in Business, Sports, and Life. And he shared so many of the little anecdotes about how he coached the tennis players. He had stories about many of the tennis players that we knew because our boys played against them. And it was just a wonderful book. And then in 2020, he came out with another book, Beyond the Lines, Creating a Leadership Culture to Achieve Extraordinary Results. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong one. I think I got it mixed up, didn't I? Okay, Beyond the Lines was
That's
first,
okay.
Beyond the Games was second. I had it in wrong order. Okay, but anyway, the second book is really talking about coaching, not just in sports, but in business and in life. And both books are excellent resources on leadership. And Rusty also has a ThinkTech program. Every week, he interviews someone who has gone beyond the lines. And it is a very, very popular program as well. He has done many workshops. He's a motivational speaker. He's worked with businesses and organizations to help their leadership teams. And I am just so proud to know him and to see his growth and to see what he's going to do next. So, Rusty, thank you for being on this program with me tonight.
Oh, thank you so much, Jan. I mean, I feel like I'm honored to be on with you. Like you said, you knew me since I was a junior tennis player. I was 14 years old when I met you and your husband, Randy, on the tennis courts. And Yeah, you know, Jen, for you, I mean, I knew that you were a teacher back then for many years. You ended up becoming an educator for 45 years, and you were principal for 15 years. I mean, I think it's so amazing what you have accomplished in your career. And I was so excited when you came out with your first book, Leading with Aloha.
Mhm,
And I thought, wow, this is going to be fantastic. And
mhm.
it is an absolutely terrific book. I recommend everyone to get it. And I was extra happy when you came out with your new book just very recently called Educating with Aloha. And that was a fantastic follow up to Leading with Aloha. And super excited. I hold you in such high esteem. And I think every educator, every teacher, so many students, I mean, students and parents, they need to all get your books because the insights that you share is really priceless because you share things that a lot of people might not realize. They only see things on one side at times. So, Jen, I want to ask you, what inspired you to write your books?
Well, when I retired in 2018, I knew I had to do something a little productive. I couldn't just be sitting around the house doing nothing, and cleaning only gets you so far. So I had kind of thought that I might want to write a book, and it was a good time to do so. You knew Jaron, and Jaron had passed away, and so I was home alone with our dog, and I thought that I wanted to write our story, my story. Um, because many kids today, our sons, my grandsons who live in Las Vegas, they don't really know what life was like for us when we were growing up. And I grew up in a pineapple plantation village. It was a great place to grow up because everybody really cared about each other. It was a very humble life. We didn't have a lot, but we made the most of our opportunities. And I really wanted to share that with our grandsons. Life, our Hawaii has changed so much since I was a little girl growing up. And I think they wouldn't have any idea that where I live now, where you used to live, Mililani, was once all pineapple fields. Going driving down to the North Shore, it was either pineapple fields or sugarcane on the side of the road. And today it's totally different. So I wanted them to at least understand what life was like for us and why we value the things that we do. And so that's one of the reasons why I wrote it. It was sort of an autobiographical book, but I also wanted to talk about how growing up there really helped me as a leader when I became a principal, because the things that I learned back then really were the things that I applied when I was a principal. So that was my reason for writing that book. And then, I wasn't sure if I was going to write another book, but the pandemic happened. And I was watching all these teachers and principals and, you know, they were just so frazzled and so concerned about what was going to happen as a result of this distance learning and the kids who were not able to get on. And I think it really brought home the inequity of education. Kids who were not able to get on or did not have the devices and did not have the quiet space you need to learn. So anyway, I was sitting there thinking, and I decided that I wanted to share our experiences at our school because I think we had some different experiences that maybe other schools didn't. And I wanted to share that. And that's the reason why I wrote the second book. And I had a blog, so I just took blogs that I thought were appropriate and put them together in little chapters, and that became the book. And so I'm really quite pleased with how it turned out. Mhm.
So Jen, you know, in your books, I love how you shared, like you said, all about how unique Hawaii was. I mean, growing up in Whitmore Village, and
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I remember driving to the North Shore, and you're either seeing pineapple fields or
Yeah,
sugarcane,
yeah.
and how Mililani Mauka was just starting to be built, and Jen, I want to ask you why did you first become a teacher?
Mhm. You know, I shared that when I went to kindergarten, I just loved school so much. And I loved my teacher. And I decided then and there that I was going to become a teacher when I grew up. And, when I think back about it, they weren't really, you know, most of my teachers were women, and they were great role models for me. And I thought it was just really neat to be able to teach other people, to teach kids. And, you know, when it came time to go to university, I knew that I was going to be a teacher, and I wanted to be an early childhood person, somebody who would be able to give kids that really wonderful beginning so that they would be excited about learning. And you know, I think people become teachers for different reasons. For me, I really just wanted to make a difference for kids in their lives, and that's why I became a teacher. Yeah.
No, and you totally have. I mean, and you graduated from Lelehua, you went to University of Hawaii. When you were a teacher and then you were making that transition to become principal, how easy or tough was that transition in becoming principal for you?
Well, it was, I think that as a teacher, you don't always realize the things that the principal does. The principal's job is much more than what you see as a teacher. And I was fortunate in that I had good mentors. I had people that I could call on, to ask questions. And they were very helpful to me. So I think that part of being a principal and actually going into any new job, it's never everything you imagined or you knew was going to happen. You have to learn some things on the job. You need to learn the people that you're working with. You need to try to help them to be the best that they can be. So you develop those relationships. Um, I think that the transition for me was helped because I had people who were happy to help me to make that transition to administration.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Jen,
Mhm.
so what are some of the insights that you can share that that the principal does behind the scenes that a lot of people really don't realize?
Oh, dear me. Well, as a principal, you're really in charge of the whole school. So, it's budgeting, it's personnel, it's, making sure people are in the right positions and that they're going to be able to work with the people that they're assigned to work with, that they're going to be able to learn, that they're going to learn to be better. I think that's one of the things about leadership is that your job is really to help people to grow and to get better at their job because you don't want them standing still, right? Because standing still means that everybody else is going to catch up with them and overtake them. So um, there's facilities you have to be concerned about. I think there's so many aspects of being an administrator. I mean, special education, meetings, working with the community, working with parents, besides working with students and teachers. So um, as a leader, you can't do it all. So really, I really had to rely on people to help me to do my job. And I think part of it was, having the leadership style that people knew that they didn't have to ask me for permission every time they wanted to try something new. I valued that they felt comfortable that they wanted to try new things. And if a problem arose, for example, if the custodian came to school and there was a leaking pipe, he wouldn't have to wait for me. He would go and do it himself and then come and tell me, by the way, there was a leaking pipe and I fixed it. I appreciated that they trusted that they could do the job without asking me for permission. Because really the principal doesn't know everything. In fact, they know many of them know more than I do about certain things. So I trusted them. And I think that, having a leadership team that you can trust and that trusts you as a leader, I think that is so important at any organization, not just a school, but any organization.
Yeah, I totally agree about that. And Jan, you know, so many people describe or define leadership in you know, various ways.
Mhm.
How would you specifically define leadership?
Well, I think of Jack Welch's quote, when you are a leader, success is all about growing others. And that was always my goal, is to grow everyone to be the best that they could be, so that they are continuously learning and improving and reflecting. And if something didn't go wrong, it's not just to say, well, that didn't work, but to say, why didn't it work and what might we do to make it work? Um, I think that was the most important thing for myself as a leader. I'm sure as for you as a leader too. You wanted every one of your players to reach their potential and to do the best they could, right? Um, you know, I read a quote once that said, in times of turmoil, lead from the front. When times are going great, lead from the back. And that really made a lot of sense to me. You know, when you think about it, if there's a budget problems and you have to rearrange the personnel or get rid of people, or let's say there's a natural disaster or a pandemic, you know, your people are going to look to you as a leader for leadership. They want to know that things are going to be okay, that things are going to, that they're going to be okay. And the leader has to be strong. They're the face of that organization. But let's say things are going really great. Your teachers are going great things. The people in your company are being innovative and trying new things, and profit is up. That the leader doesn't have to be in the front. You want to give kudos to the people who are doing the work. And I think that's how I felt as a leader. You know, I really wanted the people to know that I appreciated what they did, and for them to be able to take the bow. I mean, it's like, you know, a quarterback. You know, they make the great pass that wins the game, but it was their offensive line that gave them time to throw the ball. It was the receiver who ran the route and got free and caught the ball. So when you hear them talking afterwards in the interview, they always give credit to the others who helped them. And I think that's really, really important for a leader to be aware of, and to make sure you are appreciating the people who are doing the work.
Yeah, Jen, I love your two quotes that you just shared,
Mhm.
and obviously I love your football analogy as well. That's really
Because that,
good.
you know exactly what that is, right? As far as a tennis coach, yeah, you know what that's like. I mean, your stories, I tell you, when I was just reading again about that story, that the last match against the University of Missouri, and how you took what your coach told you and you understood what he was made, and you came back and you won that even with a bad ankle, you know. So you you know, I think that as a coach, I know that you really have given kudos to the kids, and how and you shared that the kids understood, I may have lost my match, but our team won. And you know, that was because you made sure that they understood they were part of a team.
Yeah, to, you know, for me, I wanted to make sure that everyone felt like they were contributing, that they were a
Yes.
part of the team, whether they were number 12, number one, didn't matter. But
Hmm.
for me, I would focus on everybody's strengths, you know,
Right.
and not necessarily on their weaknesses, because I wanted to make their strengths stronger,
Hmm.
because that is really what made them good. You know, those
Yeah.
certain strengths that they had, and that was what was going to make them better, is if we could make their strength stronger. But
Hmm.
yes, I mean, along the way, it's good to work on some weaknesses, but I think the focus is really to improve the strengths as good as you can. And for me, like with Justin and Jaron and my other players, you know, and the girls, my girl students as well, it was all about attitude and effort. You know, can you give 100% attitude, positive attitude, and can you give 100% great effort all the time? But if they didn't, if they kind of lacked in one of those two areas, then I really got on their case. But because, it's something that we had control of. And I wanted to make sure that we're controlling everything that we had control of and really not worry about things beyond our control. And Jen, I want to ask you, you and I, through these years, we've seen so many different leaders, some good, some bad. And what do you feel are some specific things that the best leaders do?
Well, I think that the best leaders are good communicators. They're effective communicators. People know when they say something that's what they mean and that's clear. They understand it. I think also that they're good listeners. You have to be able to listen to other people, to listen to other opinions, because everyone has something to share. And I think the best leaders understand that it's not just about them, but it's really about the whole team. I always said that with my leadership team, I wanted them to challenge me. I might come up with an idea and I might have some ideas of how it might work, but I knew that if I presented it to the team, everybody would have different concerns, different questions, and they knew that it was what we wanted was for them to share that. Because what I didn't want was for them to go into the parking lot after and complain. They needed to share, and we could get through that. And, by the end of our discussion, we usually had a much clearer idea and a much better plan, because it takes everybody to contribute to make things better. And I felt like you don't want people who always thought the same way as you. You want people who think differently, because that's what makes a plan much better. I really think that a good leader has to be a person with good moral character. You got to make judgments that are the right judgments, even if it sometimes might hurt somebody. You need to make the judgment that's best for everyone. And I think you need to say what's right and not be wishy-washy and change what you're saying, because people like to know that their leader is listening and their leader is going to respect them and treat them right. I really think that a good leader needs to be someone that respects other people's opinions, respects other people's ideas. And I think that when people trust their leader and know their leader will help them to get better, they will be more innovative. They will try new ideas. They're not going to just sit back and just, what do you want me to do? Because that was not the kind of leader I was. I wanted them to say, I want to try, garden with our kids, because I think we can do science and math and social studies, and they can read stories about the garden. And I want them to, okay, and then we'll talk about it and say, okay, what are the problems that you might encounter? What are some of the challenges? How are you going to do this and that? And, just by talking out the idea, we had so many teachers come up with great ideas. I couldn't come up with those ideas. It was their experiences, their kids, and they knew what their kids needed. So I think that, the great leaders really trust their people, and the people trust the leader too. So they'll be much more willing to try new things. And I think, leaders actually, I'm sure you've heard this quote before: the pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects the wind to change, the leader adjusts the sails. We always, as leaders, need to adjust the sails. If something isn't going right, because truthfully, nothing ever goes right in the first time. Not a lesson, not a new idea, not a meeting, things don't always turn out the way you want it to. So you gotta be able to make the the changes. And sometimes you're going to make the changes right as you're doing it because you suddenly realize, oh, I didn't think about that. And so you say, okay, and you make the adjustment. I think that's what good leaders do. They're aware and they know when to make changes and when to step back and say, okay, this is not working. Today, kids, we're going to stop this. We're going to try again tomorrow. And then just by reflecting and thinking, okay, what went wrong? What do I need to do to make this lesson work tomorrow? Then you do it and you try it. So I consider that, learning and growing. And good leaders are learning and growing every single day. And that's the message you want to send to all of our kids. You're going to learn every day. Don't stop learning.
No, I completely agree with everything you said there, Jan, and your insights are fantastic. And, I think the viewers are getting a good idea about how you are and how you were as a leader. How would you specifically describe your leadership style?
Well, in my book, Leading with Aloha, I talk about how my upbringing really influenced how I led, whether it was leading my class or leading the school or leading the Millennium Junior Tennis Club or leading my son's soccer team or whatever. But really, I think that it's always about the students. It's about the kids. You want the kids to gain the most benefit from whatever. So I think that was always my vision. And you have to have a strong vision to be a leader. You have to know, people at my school would say, Jan, you're the keeper of our vision. And I think that the leader is the keeper of the vision. I think you need to be open, to new ideas. I think I was. I think working as a team, as I mentioned, and, in my book, I talk about working in the pineapple fields and how those old ladies really helped us newbies and really kept us going throughout the day so that by the end of the summer, we were actually quite productive, workers. But in the beginning, it was really hard, but it took those ladies and the team to help us to feel that we were contributing to our gang. And, I think everybody has strengths and we just got to look for them. And that's what makes a good team is people who have different strengths coming together and working together. And, we talked about this earlier, but, being a coach, I think sometimes that saying that we're teachers kind of is not necessarily the best thing because it implies that you're going to teach somebody something and that they're going to automatically learn it. And that's not really how it is. You can teach somebody something. They might learn it for a day or two, or they might learn it for the test, but then they instantly forget it afterwards. So I think by being a coach and asking questions, seeing, working one-on-one with a kid, whether it's a player or a teacher or whatever, asking the kinds of questions to help them to really reflect on what they want to do to improve or what they want to do as, as their goals, for themselves. And I think the last thing is I was always willing to learn new things. I mean, I think as a leader, you have to be able to learn because there's so much information out there now. You know, times have changed so much when I was growing up, when I became a teacher in the beginning. I mean, there was no such thing as phones in the classroom or internet or computers or any of those things. And today there is so much information out there. We have to be willing to say, I want to learn more. I'm going to try to find out more and continue to learn so that you can be the best for the people who depend on you for their leadership. Mhm.
Yeah, and Jen, as a principal for 15 years,
Mhm.
you've dealt with multiple adversities, but what would be one big adversity that you dealt with as principal?
Well, you know, I was a principal of a military impacted school. That means 98% of our students were from military families. So the kind of life that they lived was very different from the stable life that I lived, that you had. Um, so they are constantly moving around, and they might be at a school for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. Sometimes they come at the middle of the year. So transitioning was a big concern for us, as was deployment. There was a period when so many of our military parents were deployed, and took a that was a very difficult time for um, our families and our students. So our staff had to really step up, and so we really worked really hard to ensure that they knew that we were their ohana, that we were their family, that we were there to help support them. And I think that was one thing that we really tried to tell our parents when they came, our families, was, we are now your ohana. Your family might be very far away. You might not be able to, see them a lot, but we are here for you. And I think that was an important message that we sent. Um, you know, as a teacher or as a principal, we dealt with things that were very difficult sometimes, like child abuse. That was very difficult sometimes. Um, you don't like to see children being taken away from their parents, but sometimes that was what was necessary for the parents to get their act together so that they were able to um, have their kids back. And that was, I think that for me, that was one of the most heartbreaking things for me to have to deal with, was child abuse cases. And of course, there's also always personnel issues that, you have to deal with. And sometimes it means that, you have to investigate someone, and that was never a good thing to do. And so for the most part, I think our school was we were very supportive of each other. We're there for the families, we're there for the staff. So I think those kinds of issues were very few and far between, but whenever it happened, it really broke my heart. I mean, it really did. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and Jen, you created a culture of excellence as the leader of your
Mhm.
school. And what would you
Mhm.
say were some of the typical daily challenges that you dealt with as principal, just on a daily basis?
Well, I think, the great thing about being a teacher or being a principal is you never know what's going to happen that day. I mean, you can plan it, you can have your meetings scheduled, but you don't know that something might happen at the beginning of the day that's going to force you to get out there and handle a problem. And so, um, wait, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
No,
What was the
just
things
the
I had to deal with as a principal? Is that what
yeah,
the
just the
question was?
daily challenges that you would deal with. Just typical challenges that people might take
Mhm.
for granted, but you're just like, oh man, this here it is again.
Uh, well, you have sometimes in the morning. I would get there early in the morning, and sometimes, our clerk would come in and say, "Oh no, there's no substitute for this teacher. She called in sick this morning because whatever." And so you got to go scrambling around to find somebody, or you might. I might go to the classroom and open up and take care of the kids until a substitute could come. Or sometimes, you have an irate parent come in and complain about something or other, and you have to listen to them. You can't blow them off. I mean, you need to bring them to the office and try to calm them down. And, sometimes kids, we had kids sometimes who were having a rough day. So they might run out of their classroom. And so then we'd have our walkies and they'd say, "Code Nike." And all of us would run to try to figure out where this kid was and to help the child to calm down. Um, Sometimes no electricity, sometimes the water was off. I mean, And we had a big construction project on our campus too. So, sometimes that also, in addition to the running of the school, you also have to deal with construction problems or, what's happening and maybe some complaints about the dust or the noise and things like that. So it, I look back on my days as a principal and I say, wow, it was never a dull day. You're never sitting in your office doing nothing. I mean, there's always something that's going on. And for me, the best part of being a principal was going into classrooms. And anytime if I'm sitting down and having to do a report or something, I'm not very good at doing that. I needed to get up and get out of the office. So I would go and visit classrooms and that was the best part of my job, interacting with the kids and the teachers. So
Yeah, much better than dealing with irate parents for sure.
definitely so. Yes, yes.
Now, Jen, your son Justin wrote the foreword for your second book, Educating with Aloha. How
hmm
special was that to you that he wrote that foreword?
Oh, well, my brother Chris wrote the foreword for my first book. And when I was going to do my second book, I thought of who'd be a good person, and I thought of Justin. Justin has been a great first son, oldest son. He's been a role model for his brothers, and he's not here in Hawaii anymore. He's got his two sons, and they're living in Vegas, and but we talk all the time, and so when I asked him to do the forward, he gladly accepted, and he immediately got to work and he said, how does this sound? And so we worked it through, and I was so proud to have him write my forward. And I told him I was just so pleased with how it turned out. And you know, all of our sons are wonderful. They're all different, but we're wonderful sons, and I think you know them, and you would agree with me.
Oh, I definitely agree with you. And when I
Mhm.
read Justin's forward, I thought, oh, this is absolutely terrific. And he's doing really well in Vegas with real estate. And Jen, who's a leader that you admire?
Oh, who's a leader that I admire? Hmm. I didn't think about that. Let me come back to it. I admire you, Rusty. I think you've done a great job um, at Punahou and with your life after Punahou. I mean, watching you grow up and seeing all the things you've accomplished has been just really gratifying to me. I'm just really proud to know you. Um, I had principals that I worked under that I really admired. I thought that they were passionate about doing a good job. I think that they really helped me to develop as a leader, and that's why I really appreciate it. And Mrs. Mao was my principal at Mililani Mauka Elementary School. I was one of the first teachers there. We actually opened the school. At that time, it was considered a high-tech school because they had a nice computer lab, and each classroom had a little room for the teacher with our own computer and a station with 4 computers at. Um, and people would come by and watch us as the kids use the computers. Today, I mean, my goodness, it's one-to-one. Every kid has a computer now. But she was a really great leader, and I had an opportunity to try some new ideas. I mean, she brought in trainers for us, and it really helped me to become a much, much better teacher. And when I became a principal, I had those thoughts in my mind, and I was able to get the teachers to try those ideas, and those ideas eventually became things that our whole school started to do. But she was the one who actually suggested that I become a principal, that I suggested that I think about going into administration. I would get into the office pretty early. She would be there, And, I'd sign in and then we'd have these long conversations. At that time, Randy was in the state Senate. And so he was concerned about education, of course. And she and I would talk about, bills that were going through the legislature, things that were happening in our department. And she really prepared me to be an aware type of a principal who is aware that it's not just your school that you need to be concerned about, but it's the department, it's the whole society, it's the whole thing. People need to understand that schools impact everybody, And I think one of the things I'm most disappointed about is that people are so quick to criticize schools without really knowing all that we are trying to do for our kids. And I really get upset when they complain about, like, why are they teaching math that way? Or why is my kid doing such and such? Because we're trying to change education. Education used to be about the factory. It was the industrial age, and they're educating kids so that they can work in factories. Well, we're not in the industrial age anymore. We're in the age of information, the age of innovation. Kids are the future. They're the ones who should be thinking about problems and how to resolve them. And I think Mrs. Mao really helped me to see that schools need to be more than just a place where kids passively sit and learn. And, well, they learn, but they might forget, Yeah, so I think she is a leader that I do admire.
Oh, that's great to hear. And Jan, when you reflect back on your life so far, what's an important lesson you learned?
Well, I think when I reflect on my life, I realize I've had a good life. I mean, sometimes life threw a curveball at me, but because I had a system of support, I had a supportive family, my siblings and my parents and my husband and my kids and good friends. I think that what I've learned is, even though things might get rough sometimes, you can just pick yourself up and there's always somebody there to help you. And I think I've tried um, to be that person also for others, to help pick them up if they're not feeling the best or if they're going through some challenges. But I really think that when I think about my life, I know I've had a good life and met wonderful people and had great experiences, and I continue to do so. But
No,
I did want to ask you a question, um, Rusty. Okay, you know, we were asked, what advice did somebody give you that really made a difference for you? And you had said Coach Ed Hubbs from Creighton, and he said to expect adversity. Life is not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Sorry. Okay, so tell me about that, because I love that quote, and I love the way that, it obviously has made a big impact on your life. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that Coach Ed Hubbs, he was my Creighton coach, and he's a leader that I admire because I learned so
Mm-hmm.
much from him and what he did for us. He showed that he cared about us, and for him, it was always about, hey, preparing us to look forward to challenges, to welcome adversity, because it's inevitable, it's going to happen. And so to have our mindset, looking forward to these challenges, looking forward to adversity and dealing with it, getting through it. And once you do that, you become stronger for going through that experience. You become tougher and smarter and faster and just so much better by going through that experience. So for me, I try to coach my players into really welcoming adversity, and we're all going to experience adversities in our lives sooner or later, and some of us will experience deeper levels of adversity, but adversities nonetheless. So it's something
Yes.
that we need to look forward to. One of the things you mentioned earlier about that story when we were playing against the University of Missouri, and I rolled my ankle, and it was actually a chipped bone and a torn ligament, we later
Oh,
found out.
wow.
But one of the biggest things Coach Ed said at that moment when I was in the third set is he said, instead of worrying about the things that you can't do, focus on the things that you still can do.
Mhm.
And that was tremendous advice from him. And I mean, what an impact that had when he said that to me in that match. And I've been doing that basically every single day since then. And I've been trying to instill that in a lot of my players.
Mhm.
But those quotes, I mean, life, I mean, it's not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. And look at the COVID situation that we're all dealing with here. Some people, the effects are depression and suicide, but
Yes.
it's literally a choice. You can choose to be positive or you can choose to be negative. The amount of effort it takes for either one is about the
Mhm.
same energy, same
Mhm.
effort. So why not choose to look at that one positive among 20 negatives
Uh,
and really build your life that way? I think that's just healthy living.
mhm.
Um, and Jen, if you can just turn that light on that you had earlier, that would be
Okay,
good.
it was okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was really good. Just leave it
Okay.
on like that. And Jen, I want to ask you, you mentioned that you were open to different solutions and new possibilities as a leader. And that's what the greatest leaders do, is they're always open to different solutions and new possibilities. They welcome that. Now, what are your thoughts about taking calculated risks? Because, in my book, I talk about risk promotes growth. Now,
Mhm.
how important is it for you as a leader to take certain calculated risks?
I think that leaders need to take calculated risk. You can't not do something because you're worried about something that could happen or could not happen. So, um, you know, I think that I try to I try to instill that in my teachers, and in the students, my sons, take risks. It's okay, So what? If you don't, if it doesn't turn out, that's okay. What lesson have you learned from that? How can we make it better the next time? So I think everybody needs to, I think that Randy's trying. Okay, I think that risk taking is a part of living. You can't sit in your house and not do anything because you're afraid that something might happen. I think as a leader, I welcome calculated risk. Um, I think that we took risks at our school. I mean, we didn't have permission to do everything, that we tried, but when it turned out great and people came by, to say, wow, this is great, then you know that you've done the right thing. And when you see kids really happy in their classroom, you know that something good is happening in that classroom. And yeah, I think it's good to take risks. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm
try
not the
to
best risk taker.
encourage, yeah, I try to encourage everybody that, to not be complacent. I mean, if you're
Hmm.
complacent and just comfortable where you are, you're not going to grow.
Right.
And so taking risks is necessary for success. And failure does not necessarily mean that, you completely failed. I mean, failure is actually part of success. You need to fail in order to succeed. And as a leader, Jan, so many of the great leaders, they provide such a welcoming environment for their team. They, an environment where whether it's, kids going to school or teachers teaching at school, or whether it's me, coaching a team, to really have your people come up and they feel really welcomed and comfortable, and it allows them to really grow and to really have a situation where they can learn and flourish. So what are your thoughts about how the great leaders create a great learning, welcoming environment?
I think it's essential. I mean, I think that that is, you can't be a leader if you're sitting in your office, just sending out emails and memos. Um, the leader has to be amongst their people and seeing and learning what are the challenges or what good things are happening so you can point it out to everybody else. I mean, I really felt for myself as a leader, um, showing appreciation and even sharing the great things that were happening in the classroom. That was, you know, teachers might be shy and they might say, oh, no, it's nothing. But when I shared those pictures on Facebook with the parents or, in our newsletter, our weekly newsletter, and I said, go see such and such a classroom. This is what's happening. I know that they were very, very pleased and proud, although they might not have shown it. Um, I think great leaders really, really do try to get the most out of their people. I think that's what I always try to do. And of course, it's going to be different for everybody, but even the best teachers, the most experienced and wonderful teachers, they always knew that they could always learn something new. They could try something new. And I think that's what leaders do. You try to make everybody better.
Yeah, I agree. The greatest leaders are always learning. I mean, they continue to learn, which makes them even greater. And I want to
Mhm.
ask you of an example, Jan, about courage. Courage, I always say there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. Do you have an example of someone exemplifying courage by doing the right thing that you've seen in the past so many years?
Hmm. Wow. I wasn't prepared for that question. Let
No,
me think.
it's, because it's, as leaders, we want our people to, we're trying to train them to do the right thing all the time. And that's why I always say there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. But it does take courage for a leader to make tough decisions. It does take courage for your team or your players or your teachers to really do the right thing when it might not be popular. And so I just wanted to see if you had any examples of courage in that respect.
I do have an example, but I don't think that it's really appropriate because it was a personnel thing,
Oh yeah.
um, a teacher saying something to me about what she observed in another person doing, and that took a lot of courage for her to do that. And um, I think that sometimes we keep our mouths shut, even though we know that something is going on that shouldn't be, because they're afraid of repercussions, or they're afraid that somebody's going to find out who told on them. And so I try to always make it a situation where if they felt that something had happened that they didn't think was right, that they could come and talk to us, and that we definitely would not divulge who was the person who alerted us to it. And but it does take courage sometimes, because you don't want to be seen as the person who got somebody else into trouble. So
No, I like hearing that. And yeah, we want to encourage people to have the courage to, do what's right. Jen, you know, my number one priority as a tennis coach was to develop champion athletes of character first, and then great tennis
Yes.
players second. And I know that
Yes.
you are, you know, so huge on character. And what are your thoughts about character?
I think I think that that's what we are trying to build, kids with strong character. And I think it's really hard sometimes with all this social media and um, nonstop news and differing viewpoints, because kids are exposed to so many things today that we never did before. We never had before, and I think that you know they need to be able. I really think that as a school, from the time they're in elementary school, we need to teach them about character. We need to teach them what's the right things to do. And I know many schools are today doing that. They call it social emotional learning or something similar, where kids really are learning what is the right way to do things. How do you tell someone? How do you talk to someone if you feel that they have not treated you well? Um, or how do you treat people so that they want to be a part of your community, your classroom community? Um, I think character is one of the things that we should be teaching at school. It is an important part. It's a family thing too, but it's also a school thing, because in school you'll have different kinds of scenarios that kids uh, have to um, come across, that they encounter, and they're going to do it for the rest of their lives. So if somebody is teasing someone else, what do you do? Do you sit on the side and laugh, or do you go up and tell the kid, that's not very nice of you to do that, I think you should stop? Little things like that we do try to teach them at school. And we hope that they'll learn those lessons so that they can do it on their own without somebody telling them to do it. So it becomes a part of them and their character.
Yeah, no, I like hearing, I mean, character, it's all about character, because for me, if I had a player that would win a state singles championship but had a bad attitude and bad sportsmanship, I would not be proud of that player. But if a player lost in the state singles championship and had a great attitude, represented our team with class and gave great effort,
Mhm.
I'm the most proud of that player, because it's all about character. And a lot of it, you know, that when you go beyond the lines, when you do these things correctly, then winning is a byproduct, or results or performance is a byproduct of doing those things that, you know, we should be doing. I want to bring back words like honor, integrity, respect. I mean, those are words that
Yes.
I heard often growing up, and we don't really hear those type of words or actions nowadays. So I really want to bring that back. What are your thoughts?
Definitely, definitely. And I think, we used to think that it was at the home that they would learn those things. But I think that school provides them with a really perfect opportunity to learn character traits and um, honor, respect, honesty. Those are very important. It's going to be important for the rest of their lives. And school is a perfect time for them to have to encounter those kinds of situations and those kinds of uh, difficulties or challenges. So yeah, I think that definitely we should be. School shouldn't just be about academics. School is about creating the whole child, a child who can be a contributing citizen in this world. And so character is definitely a part of that.
Amen. Jan, it was fantastic being with you today. And, you know,
Mhm.
our four books are all available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And I want to bring on Roger Jelinek right here.
Well, thank you very much. That was really a terrific conversation, really valuable. And you're obviously extremely valuable people and with great credibility. So we're delighted to have you in the festival. And I think we need probably more programs like this. We haven't been doing that much in the past, but I really, it was heartwarming. Thank you so much. Aloha.
Thank
Aloha.
you, Roger, for inviting.
Thank you,
Mhm.
Roger.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Rusty.
Thanks, Jan. Aloha.